So the first thing that I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to drop you into random breakout rooms of groups of about between 4 and 6, something like that, where you can have a bit of a discussion with others about what your take home was in last month's sessions. And if you didn't come last month, that's fine. You'll be able to catch up on what happened from the others that did attend. So we had Meredith Perry from the University of Otago Physiotherapy School, and she talked about some of her research into making parks accessible and the purposes of parks. There were 2 probably key areas that she talked about. And so when we're thinking about the neurodisability population, children challenged with neurodisability and their families, we can think about parks in terms of a place to go, a place to be, a way of participating in society, and all the other health benefits you get from that, but just also fun for fun's sake as well. A way that I can participate in society and do the things that are important to me as a kid. And about being able to do that irrespective of level of ability. So that sort of universal design simply to enable participation. But also from a rehabilitation perspective for those working to support families in various ways, about thinking about, well, what is our role in using parks and in involving parks and engaging with parks in the work that we do to support children's positive development in all spheres, and also just being able to access parks as well. So that's the very quick précis of what Meredith has shared, and then we'll jump into breakout rooms for about 4 to 5 minutes to have an open discussion and just coming back around some key things that you've been thinking about, and we'll share that together as a larger group when you're back.
Yep, I'll do that now.
Love the rabbit. If you're there, Sarah, Mirren, Meg, you've got a link there to join a discussion group.
Yep, I'll just do the joining.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I only just joined about a minute ago, and I'm making lunch and being all noisy, and so I didn't feel that I could contribute. So wasn't quite sure.
It's all right, Sarah. I'll pop you in a room anyway, so you can at least listen. That's fine.
You can listen in and then jump in when you read. Lots of people doing similar, Sarah. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Oh, we should at rooms. What are some of the takeaways that you had from Meredith's talk, or just from my synopsis just before, when you think about playgrounds, and where does it come into contact for your work in particular and your interests? What are some things that came up for people?
I think they're an excellent place. I've used them quite a lot when I worked in the community, but now that I work in schools, I use the school playgrounds a lot. And yeah, again, it's functional, it's fun, it's you can really do great movement and active work with the child without them even realising that they're doing physio, and they get fun out of it, and they're participating, especially if there's other class members around or family or whatever.
Nice, lots of support there for your comments, Judy. And so if you are tech comfortable with Zoom, what you can do now is go to the view options tab at the top of the screen and put your own comments, just try and keep it short, on this whiteboard in relation to how you use playgrounds, or what your maybe your agenda or your what's been sparked for you about playgrounds into the chat box. What's really important to you? What do you want to see or do more of in relation to playgrounds? So you go view options and then select annotate, and you can type it in directly. But I'd like to keep the discussion going at the same time. So you can also just say share your thoughts verbally, and then and Estelle can do the typing. Then we're going to do a bit of a mind mapping exercise with some of the comments that are put up. So
one of the things that we chatted about was the differences of the different open spaces and playgrounds in different suburbs, and how some families have had to travel to get to playgrounds that maybe suited their needs best, rather than being able to access what's in their local community. And yeah, so, and the differences between Christchurch, say, and Auckland, considering lots of people, the lovely Erin who was with us was just saying how there was more playgrounds accessible within your local community that where families could meet and do things, whereas say in Auckland you might have to travel a bit to get to somewhere that's got a bit more open space where you can take a wheelchair or a walker or whatever else.
So Arul, would you like to see more equitable access to playgrounds? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what that we were saying that. And I know that certainly there's certain playgrounds in Auckland that have got some sort of fencing. So for a lot of, quite a few families with the children with autism, they were just saying in order to be able to access somewhere where they don't feel like they are having to run after their children, or, where they feel safe, means that, So I agree,
Yep, so needs differ. Fences aren't very in vogue, really, are they? Thanks, sort of open plan, even unfenced waterways and things. Anybody's group, or anybody that would just like to endorse or are thinking along the same lines as Arul in Arul's group around equitable provision of playgrounds and play spaces. So there's some really good examples of play spaces, and there are ones that people kind of actively avoid because they're essentially not accessible for their children with diverse needs.
Faith, one of the things that came up with one of my families during, I'm in Auckland with the lockdown, is where families are choosing to take their children. And so with some of the great playgrounds like Cornwall Park at the moment, it's closed down to traffic. So people are actually able to use their power chairs in a safe environment without cars. So that's been really interesting. Something that, there's always some good stuff that comes out of a situation. So that has been really positive.
So another silver lining to
we need to keep on going, having those big wide open spaces so children get that freedom to explore their environment safely.
That's awesome, isn't it? That's a fantastic use of that space. A positive of COVID. Who knew?
Just checking, Erin.
Yeah, I was going to say keep using the chat function, and I can collate them into a different format once we run out of space on the whiteboard. That's all good. So just keep adding them in, and I'll collate them.
Probably try to keep it to headings, because it's going to be kind of difficult to do the next task. So maybe you could do a bit of editing, Estelle, to kind of keywords. Or you're going there. And Erin, I don't know that park that you're talking about, but was that about less people traffic? Meaning that
no, so Cornwall Park is One Tree Hill. So it's a big park right in the centre of Auckland.
And it's got cars going through it.
Usually there's lots of cars travelling through. So at the moment the parking is horrendous because nowhere to park, but once you're in there it's just lovely, and kids are all children are just biking and running, and there's so much more freedom. But it was really lovely to hear from this family who just said for their daughter it made a huge difference to being able to not worry about cars and having that space to use her power chair and to get better at her driving too.
Fantastic. Sharon, you wanted to say something?
Sorry, is that me? I was just, my little comment in there that I think I put in the wrong place was about just being able to be part of family life, to join in, to not have to go to a different playground because you have a child with additional needs in your family. And I think that's really important.
I agree. Sorry.
No, you go, Sarah.
I was just going to say one of the things that I really think is important is universal design right from the get-go. So when schools, a local school to us, had some funding to put in a new playground, and they didn't consider accessibility until somebody said, what about accessibility for wheelchair users? Oh, well, we don't have any wheelchair users in our school. So, you know, forget that. You know, there's wheelchair users in the community. There will be wheelchair users. It's just, yeah, it should be inclusive right there from the get-go, and not as a token effort or a bolt on, and not being too babyish as well. You know, when we had a disability, we have a wheelchair swing, and the newspaper put they had a teenager went on it, but he said actually he'd rather go skydiving. You know, it was sort of you know, it needs to be right for the age and stage, and also for everybody to enjoy, enabling good lives, having a normal experience at a playground.
Fantastic. I think Meredith used that as an example, those wheelchair swings as examples of what not to do in her presentation. So where to from here? So at one extreme end, we've
got kind of themes. We've got more about accessibility sitting over here on the left, then in the middle about that participation and the need for it to be included in a whole cohort of family life. And then on the right, we've got the uses really from a clinical perspective about us utilising playgrounds as part of a therapeutic kind of space as well. So it's kind of those three areas that have come through from the feedback.
It sounds like, thanks Estelle, there's lots of people, there's quite a few people who are actively using playgrounds as a kind of therapy space. Are there people, perhaps hands up if you do that regularly, use playgrounds as part of therapy, as kind of the means and the ends as well of therapy? A little bit. Now put your hand up as well if you would like to do more of that, or you would like to do it, you haven't been doing that yet, maybe nobody in your team does that sort of thing, and you would like to do more of that sort of thing. A little bit. Mostly people are doing that already. For those of you who are doing it, what's the next, and are interested in doing it, what is the next step? What would enable you to do that more? What needs to happen? What resource do you need to do that more? You might think about the barriers, but you might also think about just the solutions as well.
There's lots of barriers, I think, because if you need to lift children onto equipment, a lot of the children can be quite difficult to lift, especially if they're like low tone or got CP and like athetoid movements or whatever. So not always easy to, even at the playground recently with a normal sort of 2-year-old, we had to lift him so high into the swing. It was really it was quite difficult.
Thanks, Judy. So that's sounding like a call for better design of equipment. Yeah.
Even if the chain at the front of the swing, the bucket swing, could be unclipped, like some of them are fixed. So you have to lift them up and in.
So some quite simple things.
Yeah.
So while you're thinking on that response as well for everyone else, I want to take a moment to allow you to pop back into breakout rooms for some smaller group discussion. But when you're thinking about some of those accessibility, it's a right, so coming from that angle of it's a right to participate in a playground when you're a kid, and what needs to happen in order for that to occur? Greater accessibility in one way or another, through either local or well-designed playgrounds.
Right, shall I start those breakout rooms though?
Yeah. So think about what's easily in your control and what might be a bigger step. I want you to think small scale, larger scale.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they have so many things already on their agenda. But I just recently had some experience where I just happened to be at 2 different local parks and sitting there with my grandchildren, and 2 families with children that had disabilities were just sitting there, and it was really hard to watch them not be able to use that park, and to talk about their exhaustion and tiredness of trying to engage with local council and feeling that they just wanted to give up because they weren't being listened to. So just wonder if there can be a combination of family narrative alongside someone who perhaps has a bit of time to dedicate to carrying family voice through at a council level.
So thanks everybody. Is there any 1 or 2 things people want to share from each group? Maybe one take home from each group before we talk about next steps. Very briefly, we're finishing at 12:30. Just maybe a very brief take home from your group if there was a strong point.
It would be good to have a list of playgrounds from, for example, in Auckland, the various, because we come across them, but you don't just, you look in your own area, but perhaps 10 k's away, there's some really good one, and the degree of accessibility, and are there toilets nearby? Are there little paths? Is it in a car park? Is it safe? Not near dogs? Things like this.
Thanks, Connie. Does anybody know, does such a thing exist? Debbie, you've got a lot of background noise. Debbie,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in a shared office.
Yeah, it's really
sorry.
You've got a great microphone. If you just,
I can comment to that. There is on the Auckland Council website, there is a list of all the playgrounds with all the facilities, what kind of things that they have on there. So I used to use that a lot when I was doing community work. So Connie, okay. I can share that for you.
So that's fantastic. Please put your thoughts, extended conversation to that in the chat box. What we have is a couple of, we've had quite a lot of messages and comments around advocating to councils and clarification around what some of the policy is and policy processes are. This would be, for example, a fantastic thing for the new Department of Disabilities to pick up. And I'm sure that Meredith knows the answers to many of these questions. We'll be popping these questions and comments directly onto the Padlet page from the chat box. And if you've got more that you want to say and check in about where this conversation goes to, jump into the Padlet page and maybe even check in on it in a couple of weeks. It's on the invitation to this workshop, to these sessions, Lunch and Learns, and it's the same link and it's on every invitation every month. There has been a couple of inquiries about, well, is there an interest in a cross-sector working party? That's something that's really stood out today from the people who have arrived today. And if you are interested, the Paediatric Society would be very interested in supporting you with that. I say that as the chair of the Child Disability Clinical Network. If you are interested in getting involved, any of this stuff happens with voluntary people in their voluntary capacity, including these Lunch and Learns. But if you're working together with a small, focused, passionate group of people, I find it's more energizing than depleting around some specific biteable pieces of work. So get in touch with us, put your interest on the Padlet page so that others can see that there's a bit of energy around this and some interest. So there's some things that you can do yourself, like, for example, writing a letter of thank you, or submit a thank you comment to the local council when you've used a park in therapy, or you've enjoyed it with your family, or you've seen families enjoy it, or they have managed to put in a new accessible fountain, letting them know that people are using it and appreciating it. Simply using parks a lot in our work, you're advertising that they are important and usable just by using them more as well. And then there is
more likely to invest too if they know that they're being utilised and that there's lots of people interested. They're much more likely to want to invest in that space too.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit like letters to Amnesty International. You just got to keep hitting them with that we notice and here's the information and we thank you and please keep doing better sort of stuff. And I'm just big shout out to all the mahi that people are doing in this area already that they've disclosed today. And if we can add to that voice through the Paediatric Society, then we would willingly support you to do that. Paediatric Society does have quite a high standing with the Ministry of Health, does meet with them regularly, do submit direct reports to them. So they really do notice, and they are fairly senior managers that we engage with at the Ministry of Health. So that's another way of coming in with, as you said, Debbie, the using the weight of the medical fraternity to comment on this really important area of living well with disability. So thank you, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in February as our Lunch and Learns continue. Any suggestions for further speakers or topics, we warmly welcome those. And Estelle, is there anything that I have left out that we need to say?
No, I think that's all good. I've captured all the chat. So what we'll do is we'll look at formatting that so we can pop that into the Padlet page as well. But yeah, I think it's go forth and think about what you can do, even if it seems really small. If we all make a collective effort, then actually things will change. So yeah,
absolutely.
Good.
Ka kite.
Ka kite, everybody. Bye.